Hello and welcome to this Introduction to ZBrush video. My name is Paul McDonald and I'm an Associate Course Director for Production Modeling Online at Full Sail University. And I want to take a few minutes and just introduce you to the UI of the default UI of ZBrush. For many of you, it's the very first time inside of ZBrush. I don't want you to worry too much. It may look overwhelming. But you'll find that in short order, you'll be finding your way around quite easily. All right. First thing I want to mention when we start talking about ZBrush is that it really is a software that relies on you using your pen and tablet. Uh, ZBrush was not designed to be used with a mouse. You're going to get your best results using a pen and tablet. So if you are, if you haven't used your pen and tablet before, or you're just uncomfortable with it, now is the time really for you to sort of embrace it. All right, uh, you can't get the same result with a mouse that you can with a pen and tablet. Certainly, there aren't any pros out there working inside of ZBrush with a mouse. And if you were to use ZBrush inside of a studio with a mouse, you'd probably be, laughed at, or you might even be talked to by your art director or producer. All right, ZBrush is meant to be used with a pen and tablet, so please use a pen and tablet inside of ZBrush. All right. Uh, so speaking of pen and tablets inside of ZBrush, I should also point out since we're here that if you come up to the little apple and click on System Preferences. All right, it's going to open up your System Preference window, and you'll see at the very bottom, right there, Wacom Tablet. And you can come into your Wacom Tablet settings and adjust a few things here. Maybe you want to adjust your pressure sensitivity for your pen. All right, you can also choose if you're left-handed or right-handed. All right, so you've got all kinds of controls for your pen right there. You can go into click on functions, and you can choose or set up different modifiers for the buttons on your tablet. Now, the tablet I'm using might be a little bit different than the one you have. But if you're using a tablet or a Cintiq, you should still have some functionality that you can control through the Functions tab right here. Okay, so again, that's in your System Preferences, right at the very bottom right there. All right, so let's look at ZBrush right here and just sort of talk about its main features and things to be aware of. One of the main things to be aware of is that when we open up our default ZBrush right here, we'll notice that the tool palette loads up over here on the right in one of our trays. You'll notice that right here, if I click on this, you can see I can close that up. We've got these little trays on either side of ZBrush. We even have a tray on the very bottom down here. Okay, and these trays, I can click on them and slide them up and down. All right, but it's really important that you realize that this tool palette here opens up on the right always by default for a reason. Okay, the reason being we do all of our opening of our files. All right, where it says load tool. Inside of ZBrush, we refer to the models that we create or the geometry inside of ZBrush. We refer to them as tools. All right. So when it says load tool, what it's effectively saying is open. All right. So you can click on that, and there we go. And we get our a window right here that we can open up our ZTLs. All right. A ZTL is the standard file format for ZBrush, and it stands for a Z tool. A Z tool. All right, so let's cancel that. So there we go, load tool. We're going to be, you'll load a ZTL, all right, a Z tool through the load tool. We save, import, and export all through this tool window right here. And it should be noted that this tool window is the exact same tool window. If we come over to our menu bar and click on tool, you'll see that it sort of steals that tool menu over here. Okay, it's the exact same tool menu. And again, it opens up over here on the right all the time. Uh, Again, like I say, for a reason, because this is where we do all of our opening and saving of our files. All right. As you explore ZBrush, you'll see again along the menu bar that under Document we have Open and Save As, and under File we also have Open and Save As. But you really need to break your habit of going to File, Open, or File, Save when you're working inside of ZBrush. All of that is controlled through the tool palette right here. Okay. You can run into some trouble if you save your file through File, or if you save your file through Document. You can run into a little bit of trouble later on. So please just take my advice and do all of your opening and saving, importing and exporting from your tool palette right here. Okay. Now, you'll also notice inside of ZBrush here that we have this window that opens up, and this is called our light box. And we can click on this, and this can drag. And we have several tabs inside of our light box. All right. And what this is access to more geometry, materials, alphas, fibers, grids, all sorts of things. We have access to them all through our light box here. So this is sort of the equivalent of going through a Finder window. So if we had a Finder window here, and we were going through various folders, okay, this is the same thing right here as going through various folders in your Finder window. All right, going through a brush folder, a texture folder, an alpha folder, and this is how we can access different elements to use in our sculpting. All right. The project tab right here is going to be really important because this is where we're going to get the majority of the geometry that we're going to be using for our sculpts from right here in our project tab in our lightbox. Okay. We'll get into that a little bit later. Right. Our lightbox is controlled through the hotkey comma. So if we hit comma, we can hide and show our lightbox. Typically when we're sculpting, we're going to hit comma and hide to give us a bigger canvas to work in right here. Okay. And like I showed, you can slide your lightbox. We can come over here and double them up. Okay. Let me just go to material here. So you can see I've got a lot of materials. We can triple them up and move them around. Okay. And any material in here I want, all I do is double click it, and then it becomes applied to the material, to our model. Same with alphas. All right, just need to double click those to open those up. Project, same thing right here. So a lot of the models we're going to be doing are going to be starting with our Dynamesh right here, Dynamesh 16, 32, Dynamesh 64, and Dynamesh 128. These are going to be where the majority of our models are going to be created from these spheres right here. Okay. Along the left, we have access to various brushes. Now, right now, we don't have a lot of this stuff is grayed out because we don't have any geometry in here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a Dynamesh 16. All right, and to open that up, I need to double click on it. There we go, right there. So now a lot of the things that were grayed out are now accessible to us. And you'll also notice that before we didn't have any of these menus right here. As soon as we bring some geometry in, this becomes populated with more menus over here. All right. Again, don't feel overwhelmed. All right. This is all, again, a lot of the stuff in here you'll never have to touch. So again, don't feel overwhelmed. All right. So again, over on the left, now that we have some geometry in here, you can see if I click on this here, this shows me our brushes. All right. We have access to all of our brushes right here. Another way to access our brushes is if we hit B on our keyboard. That will also bring up our brush menu. And a very cool thing about the brush menu is if you happen to know which brush you're looking for example, if I wanted to look for the Move brush, I could click on B to bring up my brushes, then M for all of the brushes that start with M, and there's my Move brush right there. And if I wanted to be really savvy, I could notice that the move brush has a letter V to it next to it right there. And if I wanted to, I could just hit B for brush, M for move, and V for the move brush. And now I have my move brush selected. All right. But that's a little bit advanced, and that really comes when once you kind of know what brushes are in there, you can start using the keyboard shortcut. But for this video right here, let's just really keep it simple. All you need to do is click right there. You have access to your brushes. Right here under stroke, click there. You've got several strokes you can choose from. And for the most part, you're going to keep it on the dot stroke. We use some of these other strokes when we were working with alphas, or if we're painting, we might want to change our stroke. But for the most part, you're going to just be working with the dot stroke. That is your standard default stroke. We have an alpha window here, and again, we have access to several alphas. And again, don't forget, if we hit comma, we have access to even more alphas right here. All right. Most of the alphas that we have access to right here are different than the alphas we have access to right here. Okay. So I'm going to hit comma to hide my light box. So that's our alpha palette. All right. This is our texture palette. Whoops. There we go. Access to various textures. We can also import textures. Same with our alpha window here. We can import alphas that we either create ourselves, say in Photoshop, or that we find at a different website. We can import them into ZBrush through here. All right. We have access to various materials that we can apply to our model. It should be noted that most of these materials in here are for rendering purposes only. You would not want to sculpt in them. For example, the chrome. All right, let me just make an adjustment here. There you go. The chrome, or any of this stuff right here, matte cap gorilla. These are all fun sort of materials, but for the most part, a lot of these are meant strictly for rendering. They're not, meant to be sculpted on. Okay. And when it does come to sculpting, I would recommend that you use either the basic material right here, down here. It's a standard material, or the basic material 2. Either that one of those materials are your. I guess that's a personal preference of mine. Those are my personal preference materials for sculpting. Basic material 2. There's also this blend that's quite nice as well. Okay, but I would stay away from a lot of these other materials for sculpting. ZBrush uses the matte cap red wax here by default. Every time you open a file up, this is the material that you'll see. All right, and that's sort of the default ZBrush material. It's not a material that is especially good for sculpting in, although a lot of people do sculpt with it. And it would probably be acceptable for you to use this. Although most of the pros, certainly that I know or that I see in other videos, sculpt with the basic or basic material 2. Okay. So I want you to notice here inside of ZBrush. Okay, so let's finish talking up about over here. We talked about our material palette. We've got several materials to choose from, and again, just like in our light box, if I hit comma, we've got more materials in here to choose from. All right. A lot of the materials you see inside of my light box are stuff that I've added over the course of the years. Okay. So you might not have this many in yours, but you certainly have some in there. Okay. We control color down here in our color swatch. Same up here, we have a color menu, and we can control our color up through here as well. Okay. If we come along the top, we've got a few buttons up here that are tools inside of ZBrush that, again, we'll probably not be using most of these through any of the CDC or even PRM. Feel free to explore them, but we don't really use them a lot, so we're not going to talk a lot about them today. All right. Edit and draw mode are the mode that you're going to be in as you sculpt. Okay, and I'm going to demo this right here in a few minutes, but just understand that every time you want to sculpt, you need to be in edit mode. Okay, edit mode is really important. The 3 buttons next to it, are our move, scale, and rotate. And these are the same as the move, scale, and rotate that you would find inside of Maya. All right, where you want to actually move, scale, or rotate the actual geometry, this is where you would do it from. Now, I'm not going to go into how to use these tools here. That's for another video. But I just want to introduce you to what these are. Okay. Again, move, scale, rotate are meant to be used to move your physical geometry as opposed to moving the camera around. All right. These will move the actual geometry. So if I just draw this out, okay, you can see how that will move the actual geometry. Okay. Again, for regular sculpting though, we're going to be in draw mode. MRGB, RGB, and M have a lot to do with our color information. Okay, M is for material channel, RGB is the color channel, and MRGB is the material and color combined. All right. Again, these are buttons that we'll probably use very rarely, if at all, and are nothing really that you need to worry about. Your RGB intensity has to do again with your paint intensity. All right, again, not anything that we're going to worry about right away. Z add and Z subtract. Now this is how we add and subtract clay to our model. But luckily, again, a lot of this stuff you'll never have to touch. For the most part, Z add is going to be on. And if I change my brush to a different brush right here and make my draw size a little bigger, okay, I can add some clay to this guy. Okay, with Z add turned on now, and with Z add turned or Z sub turned on, okay, you can see that it will cut away. Okay, it will cut away. Z add will build up. Okay, now as a workflow thing, I never touch the Z sub button. I can get the same effect by holding down Alt. Okay, so I leave it on Z add and I can build up an area with clay. And if I hold down Alt, I get the negative effect on that brush. Okay, so even though Z sub is up there, you'll probably never touch it. All right, you can get the same effect by holding down the Alt button. All right, and let me go ahead and change my material here. I'm going to come over to my materials there and just change it. There we go. I prefer that or this. There we go. Okay. All right. So and again, we have all these brushes here. All right. This Z intensity is the strength of your brush. So I can put this way up high right here, and if I'm using this clay tubes, I can, when I sculpt on here, it will be much more aggressive than if I put the Z intensity down real low and sculpt on it. It will have very little effect. Okay, so this Z intensity is the strength of your brush, and it changes per brush. So as I go to the clay tubes brush to say the clay brush, all right, the intensity will change. So that is brush dependent right there. You'll have to keep an eye on your brush intensity as you change brushes. Okay. Your draw size, of course, is the size of your brush. And your focal shift is something again that you'll probably not need to worry about, but it controls the sort of sharpness of your brush. Notice as well that when I change from different brushes, from say the clay brush, which has a focal shift of 0, to try the clay build-up brush, has a focal shift of -56. So the focal shift will adjust itself based on whatever brush you use. So again, it's not anything you need to worry about. The only things up here that I ever really worry about are the draw size and the intensity of my brush. Okay, and just as a shortcut note, I use the space bar to get this pop-up window. And this little pop-up window allows me to control my draw size. You can see right there. Okay, as well as my intensity of my brush. All right. So when I'm working, I'm always using hotkeys, And I love using this little pop-up window to adjust my draw size. So I can, no matter where I am, I can hit the space bar, and I'm right on that draw size. You see where it says draw size right there? I'm right on the draw size. So I can adjust my draw size quite quickly as I'm working just by hitting the space bar. Okay. Same with the intensity of my brush. I can lower that or increase it. All right. In fact, from this little window here, I have access to everything. I can control or change my brushes. Okay. There's my brushes there, or I can control I can add an alpha onto a brush. I can change my material. Okay. Change my stroke. I can do everything all from this one little window right here. I even have access to my move, scale, and rotate tools up here. All right, color information, all through hitting my space bar right there. So this is my go-to button, my space bar, to allow me to adjust my draw size on the fly. Okay. If we come along the right over here, we've got some settings that really control the document more than anything. Okay, right here, scroll, zoom. Okay, you can see we can uh, move the document window around. All right, again, these are buttons that you'll almost never have to touch. We can zoom the document in and out. Again, not anything that you should ever have to worry about right there. Typically, when we're moving things in and out, we're moving the camera. All right. So I'll talk about that in 1 second. So these are all to control your actual document, and really should be avoided. You should try and stay away from these, again, unless otherwise told. All right. We can control our perspective through here. All right. Our floor, our ground plane. You can turn that off and on. And if you look closely at this button here, you'll see that there are buttons inside of buttons. So if you look at this button, you'll see a little X, Y, and Z right inside that button. And if I click that X, so let me turn this on first. You can see I turn that on. There's the Y, the floor in the Y direction. All right, so let me turn that off. You see the Y is lit up. If I hit the X and hit the floor, now you can see we've got the floor, we've got a grid and a floor here in the X and Y position. And I can come back in here and I can turn off the Y and only have it in the X. Or I can turn all three of these on. Oops. There you go. There you go. And now we've got X, Y, and Z grids in here. Okay. Again, you'll almost never need to do that, but just know that it does exist. We usually keep that on Y, and we keep that on. All right. So that floor kind of tells you where the center of your model is. We can see the model is in the center of that grid. All right. And we always want to try and keep our model in the center of our grid right there. All right. This is where you really want to be careful. If you're using these tools up here, you can move your model off of the center of the grid, which would throw your symmetry off. Your symmetry then would not work. Okay, so I haven't mentioned symmetry yet. X, I'm going to show you right now your symmetry. X is your hotkey for symmetry, so you can see that. And just let me undo this real quick. There we go. All right, you can see that with my symmetry turned on, both of those little points line up in the center. Okay, the hotkey for that is X. I can turn that off and on. And you really want to be aware of that. You always want to be aware if your symmetry is turned on. Typically, one of the first things I do when I open up ZBrush or I bring in a sphere is I make sure that my symmetry is turned on. And again, another thing that I like to do is I like to just put a little mark. Let me just say, okay. I put a little mark on my model so that I know where the front of it is. Okay. Especially if I'm working with a sphere like this, it's always hard to tell where the front or the side of your sphere is. So if I like to put a little mark on it, now I know that that's the front, and I can see my 2 points are lining up. Okay, again, X is the hotkey, and if I wanted to double check that, I can come up to transform, and I can see right here There's my activate symmetry, and if I hit X, that will turn that off and on. From this palette, we have a lot of control over our symmetry. We can control our symmetry not only in the X-axes, but in the Y and Z axes as well. Okay. So again, that was our floor button. I was showing you that. Local, if we hold down control, I should show you that as you hover over any of these buttons right here, and if I hold down control, it'll give you a help document explaining what these buttons are. Okay, so if you want to know what the local button is, you can go ahead and read that. Just hold down control. You can see it's quite a big explanation. But again, it's one of those things that for the most part, you're never going to have to touch. Okay, again, a lot of stuff down here not to worry about. Your frame button is the hotkey for that is F. You can see as I hover over these buttons, if there's a hotkey for that, you'll see that hotkey listed. All right, so there we go. There's an O, Control O for the aliased half size. Coming up here, you can see W, E, and R for the move, scale, and rotate tools. All right, Q for draw. Edit is T. Okay, so this is how you learn your hotkeys here. All right. So we've got also over here, you'll see there's a move, scale, and rotate. And these are not to be confused with this move, scale, and rotate up here. Again, remember, this move, scale, and rotate will move your geometry. Okay, like I just showed you right there, there's the move. And I can move that geometry. All right, I can actually physically move the actual geometry from the center line if I wanted to. All right, I can hit Command Z or Control Z to undo. All right, just like other softwares, you can Control Z and undo. All right, I'm going to go back to draw. Remember the hotkey for that is Q right there. Okay, go back to the front of my model. So we have move, scale, and rotate over here. Like I said, not to be confused with this move, scale, and rotate. These will actually move the camera. So if I hit move right here and move, you can see I'm moving sideways. My model is staying in the center of the floor, right? And I'm moving the camera around. I'm not moving the geometry. Same with scale. Zoom in and out right there. Okay. And rotate, rotate around. Now, the hotkeys for this. So again, these buttons are here, but you will learn to not use these buttons. All right. It's a lot faster and more efficient if you just use the hotkey, which the only key you need to know is Alt. Okay. So for right here where it says rotate, we can rotate around, but I can also come over here and just click off the model. All right. With my pen, click off the model here, and I can rotate. Okay, I can rotate down this way or up here. I can turn around like that. Okay. If I want to move, like this button right here, move sideways and up and down. Again, if I'm over here off the model, all I need to do is hold Alt. So as I'm working on this guy and I want to move him, I hold Alt and move it over, and I move it up, and I move it over. Okay. Alt is the only button I'm holding right here. Now to scale it in and out, now scale isn't exactly the right word because again, we're moving the camera. We're not scaling the geometry. We're moving in and out. We're moving the camera in and out. All right? We're not scaling the geometry. There's an important distinction there that you need to know. All right? To do this with a hotkey, again, I showed you holding Alt will move my model around. If I hold Alt, I can move it. Now if I hold Alt and move my model and let go of Alt, now I'm zooming in and out. Okay, so to recap that real quick, to move around, all I need to do is just click off my model and I can rotate my model around. If I hold Alt, I can move it up and down and around this way. And as I'm moving it, if I let go of Alt, now I can zoom in and out. Okay, so the hotkey there is Alt. It's the only button you need to know to move your model around and up and down. Alt. Okay. As I'm moving my model from side to side here, let me move it in a bit here. As I'm going from side to side, if I hold Shift, I can snap my model into an orthographic view. All right, so I start to turn my model towards the front, and then I hold Shift, and it'll snap. And as I turn it sideways again and hold Shift, it'll snap. All right, so holding down Shift is how we snap our model into an orthographic view. Okay, again, I hold Shift, I move my model and let go of Shift, and I can push it back. All right, holding Shift, I can move it over and around. Okay, holding Shift and letting go, I can move it back and forth. Okay, so again, that's what these buttons right here do. They move the camera around, but like I said, it's more efficient to just use the Alt button and get the same result. Okay, our Poly F button right here, you can see the hotkey is Shift F. If I hold my Control button, it gives me a help document explaining what that is. And basically, the polyframe button is just that. It just shows you your wireframe. This is a good thing to be aware of. Turn it on every once in a while and see what your geometry looks like. But you don't want to sculpt with that turned on. All right. You have your transparency button right here and your ghost button. This will work if you've got more than one piece of geometry in there. All right. Your solo button will, if you've got several pieces of geometry, this will solo them out. It will hide the other pieces of geometry and keep your main piece of geometry visible. And again, expose or expose will, if you have several pieces of geometry, that will spread them apart for you. Again, a lot of these buttons here aren't used very often. For the most part, we use the hotkeys for most of this stuff here. Okay. The only things really along here that I would ever really use are the solo buttons and the transparency buttons and the poly frame button right there. All right, Shift S, or sorry, Shift F. All right, Shift F. Okay, so keep in mind any of these buttons here, as you hover over them, as you hold Control, it will give you a help document explaining what that button is, okay, or how to use it. And that goes for almost any button in here. All right, if I come down here and go to append and hold down Control, it'll tell me what that is, how to use it. Okay, so very cool deal there with the help documents. And this is basically how I learned ZBrush, was going around and looking at all these buttons and reading all of the help documents. I would open everything up and find out if there was a help document for it and read it and try and learn what every button, as many of the buttons as I could, what they did, all through the help documents. Okay, so I showed you here how we brought in this piece of geometry. Remember, we hit comma, and we went to project, and we opened up this Dynamesh 16 right here, and that gave us this guy right here. Okay, that is one way to bring in a piece of geometry. Okay, now to clear my palette right here, if I'm playing around in ZBrush and I want to well, tell you what, let's go ahead and save this guy out. I'm going to go ahead and hide my light box up here. I'm going to go to my clay tubes, and again, I'm just going to give this a little bit more clay. I'm going to again make sure that my symmetry is turned on. I can see I only see one dot there, so I'm going to turn that dot on, and I'm just going to create that right there. Let me just pull this out a little bit. Okay. All right. So I'm going to come up to my toolbox here, and I'm going to save as. I'm going to save this guy, and I'm going to put him in my desktop. I'm going to call it Polysphere01 test. Okay. And you can see right here, format ZTL. It's the only option available, .ztl. Remember, that stands for .ztool. And I'm going to save this Polysphere01 test to my desktop and save it. Okay. Now that I've saved that tool, all right, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to initialize ZBrush. All right. Now, what initializing ZBrush does is it clears the palette for you. It gives you a clean slate to work on. It would be the equivalent of doing a file new. All right. But remember, inside of ZBrush, we want to stay away from file and document. All right. So I'm going to come up to preferences. And right here you'll see initialize ZBrush. And again, if I hold down Control, I get a help document explaining what that is. And basically, again, initialize ZBrush. It's going to ask me, am I sure? I'm going to say yes. And what that does, well, like I said, it clears the canvas, it clears everything out of your tool palette, and allows you to start fresh. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up that file that we just saved. I'm going to go up to Tool, Load Tool, and I'm going to go to my desktop, and there's my polysphere test that we just saved. All right, there it is. It's a .ztl, so I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And one of the things you're going to notice right away, unlike other softwares, is that when you open a file, when you load a tool, it doesn't populate the canvas right away as it would in Maya or Photoshop or pretty much any other software package. All right, but you will notice that over here it is loaded. All right, it is loaded into ZBrush. It's just not ready for us to sculpt on yet. For us to get that into ZBrush here, all I have to do is click and drag. And there's the model that we created and saved and brought back in. Now, if this is your first time in ZBrush, this is typically what happens. You bring your model in, and then I just want to click over here and turn my model around. So I click, and all I'm doing is continuing to bring in the same model. Now, if you've ever been inside of ZBrush, you've probably seen something like this, okay? Or uh, or something very similar, where you've brought in some geometry and you just couldn't move it. You didn't know what to do. All right. So if this happens to you, the quick fix for this is to hit Control N. Control N will clear your canvas, and you can click and drag again. All right. And then as soon as we bring this geometry in, what we want to do is come up to Edit. All right. And the hotkey for that is T. As you can see, as we hover over that, the hotkey for that is T. And as soon as we do that, you'll notice right away with that off, as soon as we do that, we get this box around our canvas, and we can see our floor. Okay, with Edit off, we don't have that box. And remember, we're going to get this every time. All right, so remember, Control N, and then T for Edit. All right, sorry, Control N. There we go. And we get rid of all that, and there we go. Okay, all you're left with is with the last one that you drew on. Okay. Remember, I'm going to hold Alt and drag this over. Alt. And then if I drag it over and let go of Alt, now I can zoom in. Okay. Click off the model and turn it. Hold Shift and it'll snap. Hold Alt. Move it a little bit and move it back. Okay. So now I can continue sculpting on this guy. I can go to my Move brush. I'm going to hit B for brush, M for all the M brushes, and there's my Move brush. I'm going to hold down my space bar and adjust my draw size. I'm going to move this guy forward. While I'm at it too, I'm also going to come over to my materials, and I'm going to change my material to the basic material. Okay. And I've got my move brush selected, so I can come in here and I can start adjusting this. I've got my symmetry turned on, and I can start making changes to this guy. Okay. Just keep sculpting on here. And, you know, there's going to be other videos explaining the techniques of ZBrush. I just want to again get you started on this one here, in this video. All right. So again, I'm making adjustments and changes to this guy as we go. As I sculpt, I'm going to come over and save as, and we're going to call this guy now a 1 perhaps. And as I continue to save this, I will save it as 02. So I'll come in here now and I'll make some more adjustments. Give this a bit of a smooth. Come over and save this now as 02. Okay. This is typically how I work. I like to work in increments, and I'll save every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes or so, or every time I make a major move or a major change to my model, I'll come over and save it. And I like to save it as increments, as I just showed you, in case a file becomes corrupted or in a practical sense, if I was working in a studio, my boss might say, you know, I like what you were working on earlier this morning. This way I could go back to an earlier save that I did earlier in the day, go back and open that file up and continue from there. All right, so it's a good idea if you save incrementally. All right. All right, so again, you know, I continue to work on this guy. I can continue to save him. Again, I can come in here and save it. We'll try and we'll save this as an 03 now. Okay, and save this guy. Now, if I am ready to quit for the day, all right, if I've been working in ZBrush and I'm ready to quit, uh, I've just saved my file, right? I just came over and saved my file. And now I come over and I say ZBrush quit, all right? And this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this window right here. And it's saying closing ZBrush. Are you sure? Would you like to save a ZBrush project before closing? All right. Now it's prompting you to say yes. All right. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this right now. All right. Because what I want to explain to you is there's two different sort of file types that we can save here at this point. All right. We're saving the ZTL. Remember, file, save as, that saves it as a ZTL. All right, so we cancel that. But we can also save a Z project. And this is where, again, as I mentioned earlier, I want you to stay away from this. But under File, Save As, all right, you can see right here, ZPR, a ZBrush project. Okay, it's different than a ZTL. This is a ZPR, so let me cancel that. All right, and a Z project is a useful thing if you're in a big project. Okay, so if I was working on a freelance thing, or if I was working in a studio and I had a bunch of different custom lights and some custom materials and maybe a background that I've installed or inserted inside of here, maybe I've got some custom alphas and materials and all kinds of stuff going on that are where I have a lot of custom stuff in my project. Okay, then I would want to come over and do File, Save as a ZPR. All right, a ZPR file is a much bigger, more in-depth file. Okay, what we are saving for our class are ZTLs, and a ZTL is a really a stripped down file format. It's a much lighter file. Uh, at this point in the projects that we're doing, saving anything as a ZPR file would be overkill. Okay? So this is what happens when I go up to quit ZBrush. It's asking me, do I want to save it as a Z project? Well, I just saved it as a ZTL. So no, I do not want to save it as a ZBrush project. So when you see this window, the correct response on this is no. I don't want to save it as a Z project. I already saved it as a ZTL. Okay, so let me come down here. I'm going to open up ZBrush again. Oops, let me open this up again. All right, and let's just give this a second to open. There we go. And I'm going to move this over, and what you're seeing right here is my custom UI that I've created for ZBrush. All right. When you get to production modeling, you're going to get this custom UI. All right. If you want to, in the meantime, you can certainly make your own custom UI. But I'm going to come up to Preferences here, Config, and I'm going to restore the standard UI. Okay. There's our standard default UI. And one more time, I'm just going to load tool. I just want to walk through this one more time. Load tool. I'm going to open up my Polysphere Test 03. Open. All right. Now, first, let me cancel this real quick because notice again in the tool palette right here. Notice that what's here. I don't have my model. I don't have anything in here. All right. One thing I should point out, I just want to show typically what people do when they open ZBrush for the first time is they open it up and they do this, right? So some of you have probably done this already, where you've done this and you've said, okay, well, I don't know what this is. You know, I can't even move it. I can't quit it. I don't know what this is. All right. Control N. Remember, Control N will clear it. Okay. Uh, and then you can go ahead and load tool. I'm going to bring in that Polysphere 3 right there and open. There it is right there. Remember, it doesn't populate the canvas, but it is in the big swatch. Click and drag. Hit T for edit. Remember T for edit. All right. Comma to get rid of your light box. All right. So now I can maneuver around. All right. I'm going to turn on my floor. There we go. Okay. Remember, I can come over here, change your material. There you go. Make sure that your symmetry is turned on. X, turn your symmetry on. Okay. Space bar, make your draw size bigger. Come up here and go to move. And now you can start moving your geometry around. Okay. So this was just a basic introduction to a lot of the buttons that we see out front here. How to open and save files. Remember, we open through Load Tool. We save through the Tool Palette only. Okay, only save through the Tool Palette. All right. To maneuver around inside of ZBrush, we click off the model and just turn. All right. We hold Alt and we can move back and forth or up and down. Okay. If we hold Alt and then let go, we can zoom in and out. As we turn left and right, we can hold Shift and snap it into an orthographic view. Okay. And when we want to save our file and we're done for the day, we save as, rename our file, save it as a ZTL, come up to ZBrush, quit ZBrush. Do we want to save as ZProject? No. And then we're done for the day. Okay. So hopefully that will help you to get up and running inside of ZBrush. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact your instructor. And don't be afraid of ZBrush. Have fun. Learn to explore. It's a fantastic software that is used in virtually every studio out there. So enjoy it and have fun.